5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Hello, space enthusiasts. Welcome to another episode of the Space Business Podcast, where we investigate all the exciting ways in which people participate in the new space economy by conversations with entrepreneurs, executives, investors, and other members of the space family. My name is Raphael Rodkin, and I'm an investor in and advisor to space companies. Just as a reminder, this podcast is for informational purposes only, and nothing should be taken as investment advice. This podcast is sponsored by NanoAvionics, a satellite bus manufacturer and mission integrator. Their satellite technologies enable many space companies worldwide to offer services that improve life here on Earth, such as providing global connectivity, conducting Earth observation for various purposes, or contributing to scientific discoveries. Check them out and also check out my episode with their CEO and co-founder. Sadly, I am not a rocket scientist, but I'm an alumnus of the International Space University, or ISU, which is also our partner in this podcast. ISU offers a number of educational programs about space worldwide, ranging from executive courses lasting a few days all the way to a one-year master's. Check them out at isunet.edu. Hey space enthusiasts, this is one of two episodes in a holiday doubleheader. Both episodes hopefully may provide you with gift ideas. On this one, I'm joined by Louis de Gouyon Matignon, with whom I actually attended ISU, the International Space University. His startup Toucan Space can fly personal objects to the International Space Station, like postcards, or that special piece of jewelry you want to give to somebody and tell them it's been to the ISS. Louis also just finished his PhD in space law. Please enjoy my conversation with Louis. Hi, space enthusiasts. It's time for another episode of the Space Business Podcast. I'm joined today by my ISU colleague, Louis de Gouyon Matignon. Louis, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Raphael. Very happy to be here.
Louis, where are you joining us from today?
Well, I am actually calling you from the southwest of France, from a small town called Hossegor by the ocean. It's a really famous place now because lots of surfers there. So it's a bit like a little Florida in the southwest of France. And we have a nice sunny day. And the problem is, I don't know if you've heard, Raphael, but in France we're locked down again. So not much activities going on here. But, we're trying to do our best.
Good luck to all of you with that. It's actually funny. The episode right before you is with Nicolas Gaume from Space Cargo Unlimited. And he also told me that he is from the southwest of France on the sea as well. So this region seems to produce good space entrepreneurs, I guess. But Louis, why don't you tell us about your current space startup, which I believe is Toucan Space, and give us the elevator pitch, please.
Yes, well, thank you very much, Raphael, for inviting me on the podcast. First of all, I'd like to thank you again. I'm a regular listener of the podcast. I've been listening to all the episodes since the beginning. I've liked especially the one on Dawn Aerospace, and when they were talking about, new medicine and how we could do a really superstructure in outer space, but thanks to the microgravity environment. So I thought that was pretty cool. So to sum up the situation concerning Toucan Space, as you mentioned, well, first of all, so I'm Louis de Gouyon Matignon. I'm 29 years old, and I've just finished a PhD in space law. So I've been working on that, and thank you very much indeed. And I'll be more than happy to talk with you about that subject. But the main topic on which we're going to talk about today, I guess, is Toucan Space. Toucan Space is basically a French new space startup company which aims at enabling people to send any personal object to outer space and have them return back to them once the mission is finished. So basically, the idea with Toucan Space is that you can send a postcard, a photo, or any small personal objects to outer space. We basically offer two different destinations. We offer suborbital flights. Usually we'll be flying with American-sounding rockets from Spaceport America. We are also offering suborbital flights from Sweden. And we might also, in the upcoming future, propose suborbital flights from Japan. And we also, and that's quite the exciting aspect of a company, we also propose that you can send objects to the ISS and have them delivered back home once the mission is finished. So basically, you can ask for, with Toucan Space, to send any object you want. And one of the destinations, I believe the coolest destination, is you can send your stuff to the ISS. So basically, our payload is integrated into the Falcon 9 inside the Dragon capsule. The capsule is flying to the ISS. The capsule is staying 1 month to the ISS inside the ISS. So basically, all your objects, your stuff will be flying with the ISS for a month. So it will circle the Earth like 15 to 16 times a day, etc., flying at about 28,000 kilometers per hour. And once the mission is finished, the capsule splashes down in the Atlantic Ocean and NASA sends us back our items. So Toucan Space is basically a company for space lovers. If you've ever dreamt of having a postcard that has flown to outer space, if you have someone you like very much and you want to send the person's picture in outer space, you can do it now thanks to Toucan Space. And for example, if you want to send, any jewelry or rings or anything that really touches you, you can do it now thanks to Toucan Space.
I was actually thinking about the jewelry. I was like, I guess maybe people may want to send a wedding band or an engagement ring. And,
that's right.
Use that to ask, somebody in marriage. That would be kind of cool. But I actually looked at your website before this, and I saw you have some items which have already flown on space. But it's interesting you say you could actually. It's not limited to those items that you chose, presumably. You can actually choose, it seems, whatever you want, as long as, I guess, as it's of a reasonable size. What are some of the requests you've gotten, and is there something really funny or strange?
Yeah, actually, we had quite a few strange, questions. For example, someone wanted to send, that's not really strange, though, but a bottle of wine. I don't know why, but we talked about Nicolas Gouyon. I know he's done that kind of stuff. But many people, many winemakers in France are actually trying to send, a bottle of wine on the ISS or a bottle of any alcohol. I know there's a history about that. I had heard a podcast, I believe it was last year. I forgot who did it, but the guy was talking about, that brewery that was sending a beer and a whiskey or scotch, I forgot, on the ISS. There's a lot of people asking to send alcohol in space. I don't know why. Maybe because it's, a little special or whatever, or because you can keep the bottle or send it again on, on any websites and make auctionery. I don't know. But many people ask us, Toucan Space, to send alcohol. We had also some people working in the French space agency, the CNES, the Centre National des Études Spatiales, who asked us if we could send the pictures of the people working there. So they were basically sending us a big picture with all their faces on it. And the idea would be to actually make that picture fly and have it delivered back home to them in Toulouse, in the CNES Center in Toulouse. So we have a few people asking for that kind of stuff. We also had, but we're not doing that because, and I'll be going on more about that later, but, NASA asked us so many documents and it's taking so much time to, have the right to go on the ISS. But some people asked us if they could fly like the American company Celestis is doing, small remains of people, the ashes of the people. That's the word.
There was some company in the US actually doing that as well. I forgot the name, but there seemed to have been some demand for this.
Yeah, it's a Celestis company. We actually are in contact with them, since we might be flying on a ride share with them, on the piggyback, let's say. We might be riding with them in the upcoming months. They have a flight scheduled from Spaceport America, I believe, and we might be flying with them. We will be sending for that mission only postcards because there are many restrictions anyway. But so yes, we have a few asks. And what we've realized with the team, so basically we're right now a team of 5 people working for Toucan Space. I'm the CEO, and I've got one of my best friends who is Sébastien, who is working on all the integration aspects and all. And with the people we're working, we actually have come to the realization that what people wanted, especially in France, was that we could organize some kind of events around outer space. So basically, we came to the realization that with Toucan Space, you can have actually 2 products. We can either sell stuff that goes to outer space, like, jewelry, like postcards or pictures, photos, whatever you want. But we also can organize events with space people and with people that are passionate about outer space. And the latest event we're organizing is called Space Arts. Well, basically, Space Arts is an event that will gather the work of 100 artists, people that do, like cartoonists, like designers, illustrators, painters, etc. And the idea would be to take all the piece of art, all the piece of work of all those artists, send it to space, then have it come back on Earth, and then make an exhibition around that work of art. So basically with Toucan Space, you can either send, photos, any postcards you want, or any small personal objects, or do events. And what we're realizing with the team, we're working with a team of 5 people at the moment, is that events, the people really like events. That's the main point.
So let me just ask you, just to clarify, the items you sent to the ISS, did you say they stay on board the capsule, or do they actually pass inside the ISS?
That's a really good question. Thanks, Raphael. We had a long negotiation with NASA, and basically at the beginning, the idea was for the astronauts to actually take the objects, put them in the cupola, and take pictures of the objects. The problem is, that the ISS is open to commercial propositions and commercial activities since basically summer 2019. There's been an act that has been issued by Jim Bridenstine and NASA. The idea would be to actually make the ISS open for commercial business.
And it is, yeah.
I'm going to come back a little on the history of that. You know that actually business in space is not something new. I don't know if you've heard, but in the 2000s, Pizza Hut had actually made a contract with the Mir space station and with Roscosmos to send pizzas in outer space. Had you heard of that?
Yeah, there was actually more sort of commercial space activity even in the past. I agree with you that most people will be aware of. I mean, on the space tourism side as well, a lot of people may not know that. Now everybody's talking about Tom Cruise, but many people do not know that. Back again around the same time you're mentioning, there were plans to basically fly Lance Bass from and up to the space station. But yeah, there's a few examples like that.
There are a few examples, and the recent one is Estée Lauder, who flew, I believe, I don't know if the mission is completed yet, but they should have fly quite recently, I believe. And I've gotten something quite funny to tell you about that. But actually, the Estée Lauder campaign is actually making problem. And yesterday, I had a chat with my contact at NASA, who told me that the Estée Lauder product and the Estée Lauder campaign had made quite a bad noise at the Congress, at the US Congress, in the US Congress. Basically, now at NASA, because of the new president and because Jim Bridenstine might leave NASA and make place to someone else, there might be issues concerning commercial and, ads in the ISS. So maybe Toucan Space is going to have problem in the upcoming future with missions to the ISS because of that, because more and more people in the US, especially in the Congress, are asking for commercial ads and commercial activities, maybe to calm down a little in the ISS. But anyway, I was telling you about the idea to actually send stuff to the ISS. In the ISS, we cannot take pictures of the items, so the items actually stay inside the Dragon capsule. We cannot ask astronauts to make pictures of the items for 2 reasons. First of all, because it's so expensive. I mean, the astronaut time is so expensive. It's roughly today to send like a kilogram to the ISS. It's roughly $15,000 for NASA. Plus, you have all the additional costs for the company you're working with that will integrate the payload inside the Dragon capsule. So it's usually around $25,000 to $30,000 a kilogram. So it's pretty expensive. But if you want to have astronaut time, it is way, way, way more expensive. So that's the problem we have. So no, unfortunately, Raphael, we cannot take out the items from the Dragon capsule. They stay in the capsule. They stay 1 month around to the ISS. They do like 16, they go around the world 16 times a day, and then they splash down once the mission is finished.
Even if they don't go to the ISS, I would imagine that security protocols must be pretty strict around this, because, I mean, like a bad actor could, of course, in theory, try to send something dangerous up there. Is that so? Am I right in imagining that? I imagine it takes a certain lead time as well for these items to be cleared.
You're totally right on that aspect. It is one of the most complicated aspects of our activity, is basically all the clearance we have to get and all like the rules we have to follow, and the fact that we have to, basically, if you want to send stuff to the ISS, first of all, you have to go with another company that is not NASA, because I remind you that NASA is a public company. It's a public agency. They cannot do directly business. So you have to go through another company with which you can do business. And usually it will take 6-8 months, maybe a year, to just have, the right to get in touch with the right people at NASA and to start, asking for all the right authorization, etc., etc. So basically it takes 6 months to a year to get clearance for a mission. You have to do that every time you want to go on a new mission. So we are flying our first payload. So The space flown items you've seen on our websites are actually they're for sale now, but they will be accessible and available at the end of the month of December. Basically, our first launch is taking place in like a week or 10 days. It's on CRS 21. We are flying from Cape Canaveral, Florida, and we will be flying with Falcon 9 inside the Dragon capsule. So it will be firing. It will be launched on the 5th of December. That's the dates at the moment. And we're sending 1 kilogram, and we're already trying to book flight for Series 22 and Series 23. And we're right now having problems because it takes so much time. So we have to give all the specification about stuff we're sending, like the number of items, what is on the item, what is the composition of the items. So we're sending postcards. We need to give, the paper density, the paper mass, the paper size. We're sending patches. So again, all the fibers that we are using for the patch we need to give, etc., etc. Plus, you also have to be careful not either to send something that could put NASA at risk. Like you can't send any hateful content, any pornographic content, any content that is political or that is religious. And finally, and that was, we were kind of scared about that lately with my partner, Sebastian. I talked about him earlier, but we sent the first postcard we sent. You could really see, but it was so tiny. I mean, the postcard we're sending are quite small because we want to fit inside the CubeSat size. So basically our postcard are 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters so that we can, fit in the CubeSat size. But on the small postcards, you could see like the little NASA worm logo, the meatball logo and the worm logo.
Yep.
And actually at the very, 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 very end of all the processes, when we thought everything was great for launch, they actually asked us to remove those postcards because you're not allowed when you're a company that is not, approved by NASA or working with NASA to use their logo on any commercial or public announcement or public publicity, anything. You cannot use NASA's logo. You're not allowed to use NASA's logo. So basically, even though those pictures were free to use, it's Creative Commons and Flickr. You can find so many of them. There's great pictures. I recommend all your listeners to go check out NASA's Commons on Flickr. It's great. I mean, you can have access to all the greatest pictures of the history of outer space. So it's great. But when you're sending one of those pictures to outer space, it cannot have the NASA logo on it. It's pretty hard to work with NASA on those aspects. They're really, really lawful, and they really make sure that everything is respected.
Yeah, I have to make a facetious comment at this point in time because it's funny they sort of find and ask you to remove the postcards with the NASA logo. And of course, as we all know, water bears have been sent to the moon. I guess there's a certain level of checks that are going on, which actually, would you be allowed to send up biological material?
Well, actually, we've not asked that question. I know, of course, so many people are doing. I believe NanoRax is doing it. I believe there's another company called Space Tango. They're doing it too. I believe we would have the rights, but I don't know, since our commercial object is not to actually make biological stuff. We're only a company that sells like inert items, but I believe we would have the rights. We would have the rights. I don't know for your listeners, if your listeners know about that story, but you know that in 1968, we had an important moon mission called Apollo 8. By Christmas Eve, the three astronauts that were inside the Apollo capsule, they talked about the Genesis, about the Bible. Do you know that story? Yes?
Yeah. Sure, they read the beginning of the Bible, basically. Yeah, exactly.
Did you know that someone actually sued them for doing that? And somebody in the US actually sued NASA for doing that? Because NASA is meant to be a laïc, it's a non-religious organization. And actually they got sued about that aspect of things. And in NASA, it's a really famous known story. And now everything that, and also for people who don't know, but actually Dr. Buzz Aldrin, that we met, both Raphael and I, at ISU 2 years ago, he made a little mass, when he touched down on the moon. Yes. Yep. Exactly. But you know that since that time, since 1968, NASA is really, really careful about all the religious aspects. So just to let you know, guys, that if you want to send something that is, like religious or anything, it's pretty complicated.
Understood. The space lawyer in you is coming out, by the way, and we'll come back to that. You started mentioning sort of the costs and how much it actually costs to send a kilogram to the ISS. But if I understood correctly, you were talking actually about the actual cost to NASA. But so if somebody wants to fly something with you guys, so what is the price to the end customer?
Well, basically, we're offering quite a few prices. I'm speaking there in euros and in dollars because it's roughly the same price, but it starts at $200. We're offering to fly, for example, any stickers for $200 that have flown to outer space. We're also offering to fly like patches for a little more, like 250 to 300, depending on what mission the patch will be flying on. And basically, it starts at $400. We're selling like postcards for $400. So basically, for $400, you can buy a postcard that has flown to the ISS or on a suborbital flight. You can get a picture of yourself. You can download your picture on the website, and your picture will be flying to the ISS. This costs $500. And then basically, we're calculating the cost depending on the mass. So for example, if you want to send 500 grams to either the ISS or just simply in suborbital flights, it might cost, around like $2,000, $2,500, etc., etc. The price goes up according to the mass you want to send if it's a personal object. And once the mission is completed, basically you will receive home your space-flown objects. So either a sticker, a patch, a photo, or I don't know, anything like a postcard or any personal object you want. And you will also receive with that item 2 patches of the mission, 3 stickers, and certificates authentifying that the flight has gone to outer space, etc., etc. Like some kind of certificates mentioning that all the mission went well, all the parameters of the mission, etc., etc.
Is there some sort of I understand you're not allowed to take pictures inside the ISS, but sort of like when it's packed into Dragon capsule, are you able to kind of take the picture and say, oh, look, our package is over here or something like that?
Yes. Thank you, Raphael. We actually have been doing that. We have a few pictures. We had quite a few people talking about our activity back here in France. We had a few articles written about Toucan Space. And actually, in one of the articles, you can see someone integrating our payload, preparing it for its fly. But yes, you can actually have pictures of the items that are inside the Dragon capsule. And we are also mentioned on the payload manifest of the launch vehicle. And what the people that I'm working with told me is that NASA might be doing a little publicity for a company. They actually told us, and that was pretty funny, the idea of sending stuff to space is not something I had thought for a long time. It actually was the result of 2 events. The first one was when I was in AIC in Washington, D.C. in 2019, in October 2019, International Astronomical Congress. I was in Washington, D.C. for that event. And yeah, okay, that's cool. And so were so many people of ISU that had done ISU in the summer. And so there I met quite a few interesting people. So I met Jim Bridenstine, but, just like he was a guest star, and et cetera, et cetera. But I also met a few lawyers that are working, with NASA on all the legal aspects and all the law aspects. And I met notably Rebecca Bresnik. I have met also Steve Mirmina, and I have actually been talking to those people about what we could do like commercially in space. And they actually told me that we could have that kind of activity going on inside the ISS. And since that moment, since that time, I have thought about sending stuff to the ISS. I've thought about how we could, democratize outer space. And as one of French journalists told me, we really are some kind of new space company, because I don't really come from the space background. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a scientist. I'm a lawyer. I've been doing my law studies both in Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne, and recently I've been doing my PhD both in Georgetown University, Washington, D.C., plus Université Paris 1 Panthéon-Sorbonne back in France. I don't come from the space background, but because I've been, always fascinated about outer space, and because I've been following what was happening on the legal aspects, came to the realization that we could actually, since 2019, do business with NASA on the ISS. And I seized the opportunity. And thanks to those people I met at AIC in Washington, D.C. in 2019, I was able to, build that company and launch it pretty soon.
Speaking of that, while you're giving us the background story, how I came up with it, how did you come up with the name? Why is it Toucan Space? I really like toucans, but I also hope you're not going to try to send a toucan up there and it shouldn't die.
No. Actually, Toucan Space, for 2 reasons. The first one is that when you go to French Guiana, so basically you know that there are many spaceports today in the world. One of the most dynamic one of the most active one is in French Guiana. It's in a small town called Kourou in the Guyane Française. There you can watch Soyuz launching, you can watch Vega launches, and of course you can watch Ariane launches. And when you actually go to French Guiana to watch a launch, the place where you actually have to wait is called the Toucan Observatory. First of all, I like the idea that French spaceports had a place called Toucan. And then that's really like simple. After doing AAC last year, I went down in Florida to visit KSC, the Kennedy Space Center. So I went to visit the visitor complex. I went to visit all the things you could visit, and I was staying in a small town. I was not in Cape Canaveral. Actually, I was in Cape Canaveral, but I was also in a small town by Cape Canaveral that's called Cocoa. And in Cocoa, Cocoa Beach, exactly. I was staying in Cocoa, and I had a meeting with a friend of mine that's called Rob Mueller, that's working at NASA too. And we were actually having lunch on the beach, and there were like some paintings of the toucan, on the walls. And I thought, hey, that's pretty cool. There's a toucan here in Florida. I'm thinking also about the toucan in French Guiana. What about Toucan Space? So I actually went to check on all the websites if Toucan Space was, free to be used, etc. And I could use actually that name, and it was so cool. And recently, one of my friends also told me that we should make a mission that is called Toucan Space, and just play on the funny part that Toucan Space is almost like Toucan Space. So that explains the name.
Great. And so just to make that tangible, if somebody one of the listeners is now interested, hopefully, to send some stuff up in space, they can just go to your website and there's an interface where they can book the whole process?
Exactly. So basically everything is on toucanspace.com. We are also on Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube. You can find videos there. You can find the patches we're sending in outer space, some of the postcards we're sending in outer space. You can check out our event Space Arts that will be taking place in spring 2021. So basically, if anyone wants to send their stuff in outer space, they go on our website, toucanspace.com, and everything is explained, so it's pretty easy to proceed. I'd like also to mention that our first flight is flying with TRS-21 in like a few weeks. It will be flying on the 5th of December. So there will be also stuff coming back from outer space at the end of the month of December, because the mission is taking 1 month. So if people want to buy stuff for Christmas, they can do it right away, and they can already like book and reserve their items that will be flying in outer space during the month of December, and have it delivered back to their house at the beginning of the month of January. So we're also open for customers that would like to buy space run items that will be flying in a few days from Cape Canaveral.
It's funny, we were mentioning Christmas. I forgot to ask Nicolas Gouyon, and I forgot it in the end, if it would be possible, if I was like a really nice person, just to send some Christmas presents to the astronauts on the ISS. But I think you just answered my question that actually would be difficult because of the additional cost involved and everything else.
It would be a good idea. One of the first ideas I had is how could we connect astronauts, to people that are on Earth. And the idea was actually, could we send postcards? Could we send presents to the astronauts? But it's actually a good idea. I'm going to think about that, Raphael. Thanks to you. I'm going to maybe, rethink the idea. But it would be actually quite cool if, normal people like us who are not superhumans, like astronaut people, could just, send, maybe some messages or, have some kind of chat. I know sometimes they organize, they have call between the ISS and primary schools and around the world to basically to sensibilize people on outer space. But it would be pretty cool to actually make a service that could allow you to, send your thoughts to astronauts and encourage them and pass them good messages when it's their birthday, etc., etc. That would be pretty cool.
Just delving a little bit into the operational detail. When you book these missions, for example, to the ISS, do you speak directly to SpaceX, or do you use some intermediary, like one of those mission as a service type companies who takes care of everything for you?
Actually, we're not directly in contact with SpaceX. I was directly in contact with NASA, though. I will always remember I was, again, in the southwest of France. This was during the first lockdown, I believe it was in March, or was it in April? And I received a call. So, an American called, I'm on my iPhone, and you see the Washington, D.C., and you're like, whoa, who is calling me from Washington, D.C.? I thought at the beginning it was Georgetown. So I answered, hey, etc., I'm Louis. How can I help you? And it was actually NASA calling me from the headquarters. And I was, like pretty shocked. I was doing spaghetti in my kitchen and it was pretty late at night. It was like maybe 9 p.m. or whatever. And I was making spaghetti and you're receiving that call from NASA. So I was so overexcited. That was the greatest moment. So actually I'm in contact directly with NASA, but for all the integration process, we're in contact with many companies. And I was telling you about, we had to reschedule our interview because last week I was speaking with Japan. And for example, with Japan, we might be working with JAXA, plus also another company that's called Space BD that might help us to do that. And if you want a pretty fun news, Raphael, for Toucan Space, I'm really happy to announce that actually we will be flying with Japan too at the end of 2021. So there will be a mission in December 2021, where we will be flying the International Space Station. And that is pretty fun. And there might be astronauts taking our stuff this time. For the first time of Toucan Space history, the item will actually be exposed outside the ISS. We're flying in December from Japan. The HTV transfer vehicle will dock with the ISS. Some astronaut might take our stuff and actually put it inside a little box that is actually outside the ISS. So all our items, our postcards, our patches, our stickers, our bookmarks will actually be flying really in the vacuum of space. And that is pretty cool. And I'm in negotiation right now with Japan to make sure that this mission will go off pretty well and will, fly pretty well. So that's pretty cool. So yes, we are not directly in contact with the launch companies. We are in contact with the space agencies and intermediate companies that work with the commercial branches, if you will, of those space agencies.
Okay, so that's cool. So you've gone from inside the capsule to outside the ISS. What about the next step? What about going to the moon?
Thank you, Raphael. Basically, there are two next steps. The first one would be to actually go on the moon. And our contact in the US told us that we would maybe go for a mission in 2024, either with Artemis. There's also a mission of a company called Astrobotic. I don't know if you've heard about that company. They are part of the Commercial Lunar Payload Services, CLPS. For now, basically, Toucan Space is flying with CRS, but we might be flying with CLPS in the upcoming months, upcoming years. So I was really, really excited when actually my contact in the US asked me if I wanted to fly to the moon. So we might be flying to the moon by the mid-2020s. And also, I can't tell you more about that because it's a little secret at the moment, but we're working, and that's the idea, with all the money we're hoping to make with Toucan Space. We would like to actually have a small satellite that we would send in outer space in low Earth orbits. And the idea for that satellite would be to equip it with some kind of screen where we could actually make advertisements and publicity directly in orbit. So that's pretty fun. It's not about, there was that project of actually using CubeSats to make advertisement that would be seen from Earth. It's not that project. Our project at the moment, but we're not sure if we're going to make it, and we're talking about that at the moment, would be to actually have a 1U CubeSat with a small screen on it, which would actually, put some ads and some pictures, etc., etc. And there would be also a small camera that would take the picture of the ad with the Earth in the background. So we're thinking about that too at the moment.
Yeah, that's an interesting project. There was a group, I forgot the name. There was a group and sort of a really early stage startup in the US of 3 university students were looking at that. But I think you're right, that is something logical that one expects should happen in the near future. But so coming back from the moon to the other extreme, so for the suborbital flights, which are obviously much, much simpler than orbital flights. So I assume obviously the price is going to be much lower. And I'm just curious, who are some of your launch partners for the suborbital flights?
So we're working mainly with 2 launch providers, a company that's called Up Aerospace in the US, and we are also working with a company in Sweden. I forgot their name. It's a really famous, universities launch from Sweden. ESA launches from Sweden with those sounding rockets. It's, I forgot the name. I have it on the tip of my tongue, but, basically we're working with those companies. It's much, much, much more easy to launch stuff with suborbital flights. Basically, for the ISS, again, for our listeners, it's like 6 months to a year. It's really, really, really controlled. There are many laws to respect. We can't send anything we want. We have to respect all the policy, NASA's policies, etc. It takes a long time. It's expensive. But on suborbital flights, it's much more easy. I mean, you can, like call them like a few months before the fly. You can fly more stuff for a price that is cheaper. So it's really cool to launch with suborbital flights. The problem is it's much more dangerous too. I mean, sounding rockets, they have the tendency to sometimes explode in outer space, explode during launch. One company with which we are working with that is called Exos Aerospace. For example, for their last launch, the rocket didn't work, so we actually booked on their next launch, but we're hoping that the launch will go well. So it's pretty dangerous to work with suborbital companies that are starting, because we don't know if the suborbital flights are going to be well done, etc., etc. There are much more risks, let's say, on all the suborbital flights.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that, because I mean, so it's one thing. It's like you said, space is difficult. No matter what people say, it continues to be difficult. I mean, we just had a Vega European rocket. Basically had a malfunction. So it's one thing if I sent a sticker, right? But let's say I'm this guy, I'm a wealthy guy, I'm sending like $1 million engagement ring up there. Is that insured by you guys? Do I have to take out insurance? How does that work?
Well, that's a really interesting question you're asking, Raphael. It's one of the points I've been working for my PhD thesis in space law. You have to know that today, because outer space activities are still pretty dangerous and still pretty new, you have many legal instruments that actually disable you to prosecute the person if the launch explodes, or if the rocket explodes, etc., etc. You have what's called a cross waiver of liability. And the idea is it's actually you taking the risk if you send something to outer space. So basically, I'll give you an easy example. If I send something that costs $1 million on the ISS with the Falcon 9 rockets, if it explodes, I cannot sue Falcon 9, I cannot sue NASA, I cannot sue SpaceX to have my money back. That's why many launch companies today and many satellite operators, they have insurances. But basically, when you're launching something to outer space, it is usually in all the contracts, in really the vast majority of the contracts I've seen, you have cross waivers of liability, which basically disable any prosecution. I mean, if the rocket explodes, you cannot ask for the money of the value of the stuff that was on the rocket. I hope this was clear. When you send something to space, it's you taking the risk. That is why usually ask people not to send stuff that will cost more than $1,000. Because if they send stuff, for example, that costs, I don't know, $1 million, like you said, a piece of jewelry that costs $1 million, if the rocket explodes, we won't be able, because of cross waiver of liabilities, to pay them back.
Understood. And so you kind of made a nice segue there into the legal part of your career. And again, congratulations on your PhD. So why don't we finish up on that with a couple of questions? What was the topic of your PhD thesis?
Well, thank you, Raphael. Basically, at the beginning, I wanted to work on all, the asteroid prospects and all the lawfulness of, like space resources activities and all. Is it legal to go and mine an asteroid and all? It's a really big topic today in space law. Kind of everyone's working on that topic. But I actually, after thinking about that subject, I actually moved to another subject that is, I believe, a really, really important subject for the upcoming years in the new space activities. I have been doing my PhD thesis on on-orbit servicing activities. So basically, I've been working on all the aspects of on-orbit activities. So, for example, when you have two satellites that, are connected together and are, doing work on together, all the legal aspects of those activities. Also, I've been working on the space debris kind of aspects of the situation. And I also have been working on all, the new space activities, kind of, like when, again, two satellites are together, what they can do, what they cannot do, what are the rules, what are the legal aspects of those activities. And my PhD thesis was actually, I was helped during my studies by Georgetown University professor Christopher Johnson, who helped me quite a lot. I believe you know Christopher Johnson, Raphael, because he came to ISU in 2019. Yeah, that's great. So Chris was a really precious help for my PhD thesis. He helped me during my plan. He helped me put me in contact with people that work in the industry and that work on on-orbit services. And I was also helped by someone I believe you know too, that is called Philippe Claire, Mr. Space Law. Tanya likes to call him Mr. French Space Law. Came to ISU in 2019. He's a French person, so Philippe Claire, and he works at CNES. And he was the guy in charge of, building the 2008 French space law called LOS, Loi sur les opérations spatiales. So I was helped by those two people during my PhD thesis. Actually, my work was divided into two parts. The first one was to ask myself, were there enough laws today to enable on-orbit servicing activities? And the second part of my thesis was more about what would be those activities and how could the law could frame them and how could the law could, protect those activities. So it was a pretty hard job. I mean, I've been spending a lot of time on this PhD thesis, but now it's finished and I'm pretty happy with the results, and it's freely accessible on the web. It's in French, of course. But it was a really, really good experience for me.
Yeah, and I realized I must soon have a space law focused episode, because there's just so much to talk about now, like the things you mentioned, like the on-orbit, the various liability questions in orbit and beyond, the Artemis Accords, that whole thing that was in the Starlink terms of service where Elon basically saying that Mars is a free planet. But sadly, we won't have time to delve into this on this episode. So, by the way, it's your PhD. It's now all done. You've been through the oral examination and everything has been accepted. You're 100% done?
Yeah, I am 100% done. I'm Dr. Louis de Gouyon Matignon since the end of the month of October.
So again, congratulations. And so that's why I'm asking. So Dr. Louis de Gouyon Matignon, final question that we always ask. Do you like science fiction? And if yes, what do you like? And this could be books, TV series, movies, anything.
I love science fiction. And I don't know who said on the previous podcast you made, someone said, I'm not really a fan of science fiction. I actually love science fiction. I think it's the best because it makes your mind, think bigger and think deeper in the future. And I love that. Say I have maybe two movies that I have loved. The first one actually changed my life. Of course, it's the one everyone knows, so not really new about that story. It's called Interstellar. Of course, I was really moved. Before doing space, I was more into politics. If people check my name on internet, I've got a Wikipedia page. I've been going a lot on TVs. I was fighting for Europe because I believe in Europe a lot. I was also helping minorities, etc. But it came a time when I saw Interstellar, and because of that movie, I wanted to do space. And there's especially one moment that truly changed my life. It's the moment when the team goes on the planet with the big waves, and when they come back, they see their buddy that has stayed in the capsule, and the guy has aged 30 years. Oh my God. When I saw that, I was really, really moved. And that was the best part of the movie, I believe. And I'll say that also I have really liked also Gravity, but that's a little easy. I've watched so many space movies. I don't know if I'd say maybe I've liked Dune also a lot, which is not really a space movie, which is more a science fiction movie. But yeah, I'll say I've actually loved Interstellar, and it has actually truly changed my life. So people that have not seen that movie, please stop everything you're doing at the moment and go check Interstellar right now. It's great.
It is a great movie, and it's great from the scientific point of view because they try to be very accurate, like you say, with the things like time dilation and using the relativity and even the how they portray the black hole. I mean, Kip Thorne from Stanford was the scientific advisor on that movie, in case people don't know. But it's kind of funny actually to say, because this is a very scientific movie, and it's interesting that got you into space, whereas you mentioned your previous interest in politics, because of course there is science fiction which does try to involve the political angle as well. I mean, arguably The Expanse touches a lot on politics. Foundation, Isaac Asimov, arguably has politics in it. So there's a few things there as well. But Louis, thank you so much for being on the show. Best of luck with Toucan Space. We love to see you flying more stuff, and yeah, maybe we'll have a future episode and talk about space law as well.
Okay, that's great. Thank you very much, Raphael, for your invitation. Thank you for your time, and to all your listeners, sorry for my French English. I'm so sorry, and I hope you guys won't get annoyed by my accent or anything. And best of luck to you all, guys. Thanks a lot.
Well, that's it for another nominal episode of the Space Business Podcast. If you like this podcast, please consider giving it a 5-star rating on your favorite podcast platform, such as iTunes. You can follow us on Twitter at podcast_space. Also consider supporting us at www.patreon.com/Space Business Podcast. If the podcast got you interested in learning more about the business opportunities in the space economy, check out my new online course on space entrepreneurship on udemy.com. The link is in the episode description. Lastly, If you have any feedback, including ideas for guests, and that may include yourself if you have an exciting space story to tell, or interested in being a sponsor, drop us an email at spacebusinesspodcast@gmail.com. I look forward to seeing you for the next episode.